What's going on, guys? Time for a little YouTube recap. We had some really good intraday gaps to play off of today. We had some fibs, we had some moving averages, we had a lot of confirmational weights. So let's get into it. Start at the X here, formerly known as Twitter. Pointed out this morning, it was like 5:47 in the morning. Yeah, it was sub 6 in the morning. It was very, 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 very early. So we were playing some of these moves here that we had grossly extended from gaps. And when we get grossly extended from gaps, we have an opportunity to run them back. It's my drawing tool here. There we go. To those gap fills. And I usually generally look at these at that 1 minute time frame. And I'd posted these, and we already had some pretty good P&Ls coming up from the higher low bottom. And I was trying to track down my ultimate long target of 17,726 and some change today. But we had a secondary target, right? So we did call this one in the Discord and on the Twitter. If you follow us over there at X and or formerly Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Let's get back into some of the big boys here. Now, we've been following SPY, okay? And I do want to bring up a couple little things on ES and an NQ here in a second for the gaps. But so a majority of this was following SPY's push down and then pop back up. So we have the golden pocket. We talked a lot about all of these targets here coming up for the golden pocket. I'm not gonna spend too much time in this because we did about 100 videos on this already. Is what it feels like is anything under this 2618, 524.61. That is our top of the market call, which we had hit. And then we are coming down to the box of the Fibonacci, and the golden pocket right here above or below the 50 retracement on that weekly candle was going to be a bounce retracement and then continue to the gap fill. Now, yesterday we also posted on X, we had an over under marker for long short. It was 505.72. So for yesterday's call, we needed to get under here, confirmation, and go attack the gap, as we said on X and Twitter as well. Moving back into today, we furthered that gap lower and played the same exact weekly fibs. Now, we had a really nice long up here on the SPY, right? And let's change this to NQ because it obviously happened on the Qs as well. And let's talk gaps. Now, this morning I posted this again, and we talked about it in chat in the Discord. All timestamps for the premium members here. We had a gap open on futures here. So when the futures opens at 5 p.m. Central for me, it left a gap, right? And then I put a gap fill line here, 17,665. for that gap fill. And I said to my crew, I was like, even through data, even through jobs here, I'm going to play long counter trend on the push because of the gaps. So if we go to the 1 minute chart and we zoom in real close, we called 17,726. And that was because of this guy right here. TOS doing TOS things. Let TOS think for an hour and a half here as the poor dinosaur garbage platform tries to think. So you got to zoom in pretty tight here. And this is where we got this. This is a 1 minute gap. Okay. 17,726 to 17,727. The gap fills right above this. Obviously, I always get out just before. So that gap was left open on this initial dump towards the opening gap. So the one we just mentioned. So now we have gap 1 and gap 2. So let's talk about that and look at what these say. Okay. Let's shrink this down. I know it's a 1 minute chart. We'll get a little harder to see. We'll slow her down a little bit. There we go. So we had this gap fill right here, and that was going to be a long, and there's also going to be a long back to the opening fill gap. So this is gap number 1. This is gap number 2. Okay. And this is how we played this morning. It was a long all pre-market for that early point, higher lows, higher highs. And I played a lot of these scalps, and then I noticed it wasn't quite getting over that 666 for the breakout to fill in this little gap. So I'm like, oh, okay, we got data coming up. It's probably going to sell back down. And then we could actually come back down and fill gap number 2 at 17,665 first before it wants to go back up. And that's what it did. It actually had a beautiful liquid washout this morning. We called the higher low and called this V reversal right here for the chats as well. We had 3 really good calls. So how do we play that? Well, we're going to bring up our metrics on the 5 minutes. So I was watching this very close here, along with the VIXI. We'll start with that after. Let TOS do its thing here. So 5 minute chart here on the Qs and NQ. And we'll start with the oscillation indicators, like always. Let's get those up. Alrighty. So we had not came to this gap fill. Now remember, this is the whole section I was trading right here long as is prior to the jobs, data, and everything else for unemployment. And we had high, low, higher highs, and we kind of topped out right here. Well, the histogram was telling us on the 5 minute chart already that this little breakout to fill this gap right here at 17,726 just wasn't quite ready yet. You can see the histogram on the Mac here. Auto zoom this one more time so I can't get a better image. Its TOS scale is horrid. There we go. So it was right here. You can see that with my dumb head there? Nope. Let's move that over a smidge. There we go. So again, this gap was not filled because we could not get a tag, So we trolled back down. I said, there's going to be a long that's going to come all the way back up and fill this gap potentially today. We called over 120 points on this long. So we didn't get the tag here. No tag, no tag, no tag, no tag. Oscillation indicators say, well, histogram was showing us backside right here, getting small buyer waves on that 5-day. We topped her here in the RSI, and then right when she broke her here, right? No big deal. Data popped back up, and then data continued to leak. No big deal. So we came back down and filled this gap first. Now, this gap hit prior to data. This was the fill for gap number 2 at 1766, and then it wiped out the morning, which is fine. It just wants to trap some shorts and then stop out some longs first, right? So let's take a main look again at SPY, because I play these intersectors. I trade them no matter what. I can trade Q and SPY, and I just trade the futures off of the ETF tickers. So for SPY, I said, okay, come all the way back up towards that 504. Our over-under for the day was 512 and 501.61. So obviously just the same golden pocket weekly fibs that we've been using. Here's the 50. Here's the golden pocket 1, golden pocket, oh, 1 behind, golden pocket 2. Not this guy. So once we had came back into the golden pocket right here, anything above here, we were going to get squeezed back. And we knew that the NQ gap that we had called way earlier was still open. So there was a chance that this would push down. No gap fill on the daily chart on SPY, push all the way back up, let the NQ gap chase down, and then L go down, because my long target was obviously called 17,076. And after that, we were going to go back short to attack the gap lower. And that's what we got. We got fresh lows. If you've been paying attention to the videos in the last month, we have an unfilled intraday gap on SPY right here. It's unfilled gap intraday from 220 of 24. That means intraday during live trading, there was a gap left open to the right side of price action. It will have to magnet back down and come back and fill this. And this is where the long-term puts that I've been picking up here at highs and talking about for rollovers for the last how many weeks in a row for my private chat and all the big shorts that took this trade with us. That is the final target. Now we got within literal target of 20, 30 cents. So I did cover a 99% of one little runner in case we get a gap and go tomorrow in from today, which would be yesterday. So looking for tomorrow's candle to potentially put a gap and go through this gap, which is still potential. So I left one on just on the NQs just to see what happened. But we did lock in and we did call that top on SPY, and we just had beautiful volatility and one big rush red candle down here. You cannot not take profits on those options. Okay, so those gaps. Now let's look at ES real quick. So I do want to mention there's an ES gap here. And this is how we did that 14,000 plus today on the PAs and the live. And we had, you guessed it, I'll go to the 1 minute chart, another gap on the SPY, and it was an above gap. And I was paying attention to this one pretty close because it's what TOS do. It's a little calculation deal here. Oh, it looks like my marker died for it. That's okay. Another one that was right there. It is. So we had a gap right here. So this initial down at 4:30 in the morning, I seen push all the way back down. I'm like, ooh, another gap fill. So these little 1 minute gaps, you guys really got to start paying attention to here. We talk a lot about this on the channel and live. So once this came back up from the low, I'm like, oh, great, it's coming back up. We get the higher low. We got a free trade to the gap fill here coming up. So I actually longed into all this stuff right here on some of the ES trades that you see for that 4 grand green on the PAs, and came back to that gap. Now, again, coming into some of the later pre-market, which is cool. We also have back test +2, -2. I think that was the only gap I was worried about in the morning there. We had one more confirmational. Probably the 5 minute that I was thinking of. But I digress. We'll keep it on with the gaps here. So with those two gaps, we actually created another gap to that upside precursor to that, and then just loops back down. And again, you see this thing kind of consolidating here at lows, hitting really close to that 5,035. That's also a prior premium level we said for volume profile as well today. So a lot of different areas here just kind of consolidating. So it hasn't filled the gap completely yet on the daily either. So we'll see what that price action does. And last but not least, I do want to talk a little bit about our anchored VWAP strategy here in the morning. So let me go back to Qs just to finish up the video here on SPY. We had pre-market top downs, and this is another reason why we took these longs here, because we had an opportunity to trace back to the purple VWAP. So what this is what we're looking at right here. Let's go to a single pane. delete this, make it a little bigger. So what we're looking at right here is, again, just a 5-minute chart. And I took the opening pre-market candle top because this is the highest point of pre-market, which ends right here. Okay. So the highest point of pre-market, when something goes -3 on an anchored view app from a top down, so this is the top, and then price action is down, I look for something to hit a massive support, right? And then have an opportunity to scale back up. Well, you see a massive volume profile that I'd used right here on Qs, claimed the absolute bottom. Where was that? Well, it was into the -3. It's actually way worse than -3 territory down here, and that's what caused that V reversal. So I called to moving average confirmation from this. So let's get into that on Qs and SPY. So when something has a top down like this, and we come into a very reputable support that we had called here, we call this exact bottom for this volume profile. It's a double overlapped 30-30. So this came in pretty hot here, pretty nice, and then it rallied right back to that gap fill, and then obviously crapped the bed. Now it's just floating, and we had two really, really good calls for this, and that was just back to anchors. So when you have a top down and it comes from the low, we look for the center retracement first, and if it breaks back over that, we look for +1, +2, and then we just take profit accordingly as we come in. But let's look at the moving averages on the Qs, because we called 100 EMA and then all the way back up to that gap fill on our ETFs. So on Q's ETF right here, we had an opportunity to come back to moving averages, and then of course all the way back up. For me was above pre-market highs, pre-market open, and of course the gap on NQ. That gap was the main thing I was worried about. So right here again, big POC, huge volume control, 423.80s. We called that, got the higher low, got target 1 right here off the first VWAP tag. This is a very, very, very like 8-year-old lesson that we do. If some price action comes out of the gate like this and washes out, and it finds a reputable support, so you wait till it hits a clean support, something like a massive volume profile, a weekly level, something like that. Not just a simple little support, but a monster support. And it comes back to the first VWAP tag. So we had a long call right here, and this was first VWAP tag, boom. And I said, take profit, we're gonna consolidate. We had a 3-piece. A 3-piece is something that scales in and does a 3-part move, a sequence of lower highs, lower lows, or higher low, higher highs, but it sequences in 3s. And you can see this play out right here. So we said long to the first VWAP, and I said it's going to consolidate, go sideways, and then continue the breakup all the way to chase the gap down. So you have 1 top, 2, and 3, cycling and reverse. Okay, so it did 1, 2, and then on the 3rd strike, it went flying back to the upside and got our target 2, because we said from here, I longed all of this in here back to the 100 EMA, and I said just let this next consolidation part work out the exact same as the last. So it goes up, hits target 1, goes into consolidation, pushes up, hits target 2, goes into consolidation, pushes up, you get the point, target 3 into the +2, 200 SMA would have been this one, and then of course chasing down the gap for the millionth time. So those gaps left over on the 1 minute ended up being magnets a lot of the time. And like I said, when this started dumping out, I said be very careful on the V reversal today, just because of that NQ gap that was left way up here. That was it. And so we had a very good opportunity to potentially come back down to some very big POCs, held the higher low, and we've seen this V coming from a mile away. So we called over 130 points on just a single trade today, much less another 8 trades that I walked everybody through in pre-market on the Discord and our live trading. So if this helps you out, guys, another recap, we do have awesome codes down in the description below. TG33 will get you some discounts at Apex Trading. It will also help out the channel. If you want to trade with us, the description also holds the key to the Elites link. You can come trade with us in the pre-market and live. We only trade for about a couple hours in the morning, though. Get that opening morning volatility, then we stick to the Discord. If you want to check that out, shoot us a message, grab the link, hit me up in Discord, and I'll talk to you guys on the next.